Let's take a look at arrays in C#. Now, an array is a variable that can hold multiple values. Previously, all of the variables we declared could only hold one value, like dog name equals Winston, or dog age equals 5. We couldn't have dog name equals Winston and Finn. We had to just pick one. An array is different because it's basically a container that holds multiple values. So let's look how we do that in C#. My starting file here, it's calling a method that changes my background colors, and then I'm waiting for a key press. So all this console application is doing right now is giving me a white console. So let's add some code here. Declare a new array for middle names. So the first thing I want to start out with here is the data type of my array, and since middle names are strings, I'm going to declare this variable as a string, and then I use an opening and closing square bracket here to denote that this is in fact an array. Follow that up with a space and then the name of my array. The name of my array is going to be middle name, and when we're naming our array variables, we do not use plural nouns, so this would not be middle names. We want middle name, singular. Even though it holds multiple middle names, that's the standard that our textbook says to go by. And then the equal sign, the keyword new, and then the data type again, and then finally the length of our array. Our array is going to have 5 items, and that's why I have the 5 in the square brackets there. So now I'm going to assign some values to the elements of this array, to the items of this array. So I can do that by typing in the name of my array and then the index location where I want to put something. And so the first index location for middle name is not the number 1, it's actually the number 0. We use a zero-based numbering when we're referring to our array elements and array items. So that's what I start with, and then following this, it's just like assigning a value to any other variable. Abe is my first middle name in this list, and then let's continue adding an item to index location 1, which is the second value in my array. This will be Bill. Okay, there we go. Those syntax errors went away. So I have this array that has 5 elements, and I'd like to see those names on the console. So you might be thinking, oh, that's simple. All we need to do is console right line and then the name of our array. Well, if I try to do that, let's run this and see what we get. So our console says system.string up here. Oh, that's not what I was expecting. I was expecting to see Abe and Bill and Charlie and Danny and Evan. What's going on there? Well, the console did in fact print this variable, and this variable is an array, and that's what it said. It said this is an array. We can't print an array. We can print the individual elements inside of an array. So my next comment here says display the third item of the array on the console. Now that's something I can do. So let's do a console.writeLine middle name at index location 2. Even though it's the third item, I am accessing index location 2 because it's the first, second, third item in my array. So now when I run this, I should see the name Charlie appear on my console window, and I do in fact see that. And now let's change the value of an array element. Let's say it's not Evan in middle name 4, it's actually Eddie. So I can do that. Middle name at index location 4 equals Eddie. And that's going to overwrite Evan with Eddie at index location 4 in my middle name array. Next here, display the length of the array on the console. So all arrays have a length property, and the length property is going to be the number of items in it. So we know that number is going to be 5, or the last array index plus 1. So the length of our array is 5 because there are 5 elements in it. And so let's put this in a nice sentence here. My array has token 0 items. And inside of token 0, I want to put my array length. So middle name dot length. So this is basically going to turn into the number 5, and we should see my array has 5 items printed to the console. Let's run it. There it is. My array has 5 items. So now I'm going to declare a new array for tax rates. Now tax rates can be decimal places, and so I'm going to declare this as a double. And it's an array, so we use our opening and closing square brackets like before. We'll call this variable tax rate, not tax rates, just the singular noun here, equals new double, and we'll put 3 tax rates in here. And let's put some values in here. So tax rate at index location 0, let's set equal to 15%. Let's set index location 1 to 20%. And index location 2, or the third element of our array, to 25%. Okay, so that works. We can run that and no syntax errors. Same output as before. But now I'm going to try to add a 4th tax rate. Let's see if this lets us. Tax rate at index location 3 equals, say we want a 30% tax rate here. And now let's run that and see what we get. Index out of range exception. And that's because we specified that our array should have a length of 3, and yet we're trying to add a 4th item. So we cannot do that in C#. When we declare our arrays with a specific length, we have to use that length for the duration of the program. If I wanted to add that 4th tax rate, I would have to change this number up here in my declaration statement. Now I can run this without any syntax errors. Next thing I'd like to demonstrate here is a for each loop. Now a for each loop is a special type of loop that goes through the items inside of an array. And we use the for each keyword to start this line of code, followed by a parentheses, and then the data type inside of our array. And we're going to be actually accessing this middle name array, and those were that was a string array. So each of the elements inside of that array are strings. So for each string name in middle name. And so this loop is going to run 5 times, right? 1 time for every name in our middle name array. And so inside of this, I just want to do console.writeLine, and I want to display that name. And that name is the variable I declared up here. I could have called this anything. I could have called this ASDF and ASDF. The word name just is a little more descriptive for me, but name doesn't have any special meaning. Okay, and so if I run that now, this loop will run 5 times. Each time it will write each of the names of my array onto the console. Let's check it out. There they are. Okay, so that's one way of looping through an array, a for each loop. Other times you might want to use a traditional for loop, and where the index of that for loop, the counter of that for loop, is basically going from 0 to the top index item of your array. And so let's do a traditional for loop, and this loop is going to go start from 0 and go up to 4. It's not going to run a 5th time. So index location 0 through index location 4, I++ is just going to increment that counter each time through the loop. And so I can do the same thing here. I could do a console.writeLine, and in here I could access the I element of my middle name. So the first time through the loop, I is going to be equal to 0, so I'm going to get middle name at index location 0, so I should see Abe printed on the console. The second time through the loop, I is going to be equal to 1, because we will have incremented it, and so middle name at index location 1 is going to be Bill, and so on. So this will give us the same output as this loop. This loop and this loop are going to do the same thing. Let's run that. And there's my 5 names both times with both of the loops that I did. Last thing I want to mention here is parallel arrays. Parallel arrays are 2 different arrays where you want to store different data types. So say we want one array to store product names and one to store product prices, and we want the name to correspond to the price. We can't do that in one array because names are strings and prices are doubles. So I'll show you how to do that. We'll declare a new string array and call this product name equals, and I'll do 3 Apple products in here. And also I'm demonstrating here how to initialize a array when we create the array. So up here I was just creating an empty array with 5 elements and later adding the elements in there. Down here I am going to create an array with 3 elements and give it those 3 elements right here at runtime. Okay, so this basically creates a new array called product name and assigns these 3 values to it. So the length of product name will be 3. And now let's create another array, a double array for price. And so in here we're going to have the prices of these items. So an iPad is $499, a MacBook Pro is $1299, and a MacBook Air is $999. There we go. So these are, sorry about my typo, these are parallel arrays because the first item in product name corresponds to the first item in price, or the index location 0 of product name corresponds to index location 0 of price. And so now if I put a nice sentence in here, maybe costs token 1, and I want to format that as currency. And so in token 1 I want to put product name at index location 0 followed by price at index location 0. I'm accessing the same index location, and so when I run this code we should see iPad costs $499. Let's run this and see if that works. There it is. iPad costs $499. And so I can copy this same line of code and do the same thing for index location 1 and index location 2. And now our output will show us our prices for MacBook Pro and MacBook Airs. Slick.